It's been quite the week in the Westminster bubble. The former Home Secretary Suella Braverman sat down for an explosive interview with her political editor Christopher Hope, her first since she was sensationally sacked by Rishi Sunak in November. Ms Braverman was forthright about the state of the flagship Rwanda bill, not being shy about highlighting its shortcomings and even vowing to vote against the legislation if it doesn't come up to scratch. Let's take a listen.
We need an effective deterrent. Unfortunately, it's lacking in the essential things that is going to make this bill work, that is going to stop the boats. We want this bill to work. It currently does not. And to pretend otherwise, I'm afraid, does a disservice to the British public. It amounts to a betrayal to the British public. I'm only going to support a bill that works. As currently drafted, this bill does not work. And if there are no improvements to it, I will have to vote against it, I'm afraid.
Joining me now is the political editor of the Express Online, David Maddox. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us. Is Suella right to say that the public won't forgive the government if they don't stop the boats?
I think she's absolutely right, and this is a key issue in the election. After the economic issues, this is number 2 on the list, and frankly, Rishi promised last year that he'd stop the boats by the end of 2023. He failed. That's, a real reason about why his own future is now in doubt. A lot of people are talking about Suella as a potential replacement for him, and, no wonder. Next week's going to be really big, really big.
I mean, people are talking about Suella as a replacement for Rishi. Do you think if this week is a disaster for Rishi, that could actually happen?
I do. I mean, we're looking at the polls again. I've just seen a poll from this week, putting Labour still 20 points ahead. We're looking at Reform coming up in the polls, eating away at Conservative votes, and this is before any potential Nigel Farage comeback. So they're already on 10% with Richard Tice as the leader. And it's, and the reason for this is because people feel betrayed. They feel that they don't have a real Conservative government. They're not tackling the issues that were promised in 2019 that would be tackled. They don't feel that they're succeeding in getting kind of a Brexit dividend done, and especially on bringing back control of our borders. And, I'm afraid, there's a large section of the Conservative Party now, in terms of the MPs, are looking at their seats, are thinking, well, we're probably not going to win. And frankly, we've got nothing to lose if we go for yet another leader, and maybe we'll get it right this time.
Now, for a bit of perspective, I'm going to bring in my new pal, trades unionist Andy MacDonald. Andy, I mean, what did you make of this interview? Do you think this Rwanda bill is as weak as Suella says?
I think it probably is weak. I think even the Prime Minister himself admitted that the whole Rwanda thing was a gimmick. So I think it's been weak from the start. Suella championed the Rwanda bill, and then, well, it wasn't the Rwanda bill, but the Rwanda gimmick, and it got defeated by the courts. The court said it's not legal. So she even lost her job kind of just before that happened. So I think it's quite hypocritical of her to be going, oh, we need to stop the boats, we need to do all this, when she was Home Secretary for, a year and a half, and she didn't manage to do any of it.
Yeah, but I mean, in fairness to Suella, the Home Office, the civil service, seemed to do everything they could to get in the way. And this is one of the issues, David, that we have. I mean, it's hard for a democratically elected government to enact the will of the people when they're up against, the ECHR, the Home Office. Everyone seems to be a stumbling block.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many stumbling blocks. I mean, we saw it as well with Priti Patel, who was actually, of course, the one who devised the Rwanda plan in the first place. The credit or discredit, depending on your perspective, should go in many ways to Priti. But, if it had been allowed to work, then I think it would have succeeded, because it would have provided the deterrent that was needed to break these human traffickers' models. In the end, we don't want people, whether we're on the left or the right of politics, we don't want people profiting and of smuggling human beings often into modern slavery and all the rest of it. And that's what this issue is about. It's not just about control of our laws. It's actually about humanitarian stuff as well. And there are plenty of other things that could be done. I think Andy's right that they should have reduced the numbers more in other respects, using other things. But they're not wrong to go after the Rwanda thing. And in the end, the issue is going to be whether we accept the rules of foreign bodies like the ECHR, or we accept our own domestic law, and that's going to be a real debate.
Yeah, because Reform are talking about just leaving the ECHR, vetoing it completely, so they wouldn't be able to do these sort of last minute bids to ground the flights when they're just about to take off. I mean, Andy, do you think the time has come for Britain to perhaps back away from some of the international institutions or wider institutions that govern it, and take back our sovereignty?
I'm not too sure, but just on your point about Reform UK, it's not just Reform UK that are saying that we should leave the ECHR. Even more mainstream figures like Dominic Cummings, the chief advisor or chief person or whatever he liked to call himself over those years, he's in favour of leaving the ECHR. He blogs about it every other week. I think actually if we look at legislative priorities, I don't think leaving the ECHR is one of them. I think we can stop the boats without leaving the ECHR. I think it should be a consideration that any government takes, whether it's Conservative, Labour, or even Reform. But I don't think it's in the top 5 legislative priorities for Rishi, Starmer, or Tice, whomever is Prime Minister.
Yeah, well, moving on. Earlier in the week, Sir Keir Starmer caused a stir with his comments towards Rishi Sunak, accusing him of not getting Britain getting called out as dog whistle, with some even accusing the Labour leader of starting a race row. Let's take a look at that exchange.
Every week he stands here and tells the country they should be thanking him, not questioning him. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't get what a cost of living crisis feels like. Doesn't the country deserve so much better than a Prime Minister who simply doesn't get Britain?
Now, still with me is the political editor of the Express Online, David Maddox, and trade unionist Andy MacDonald. Andy, what did you make of that?
Well, I don't think, Claire Coutinho, the Secretary of State for the Environment and Net Zero and Energy Security, well, she's not the Environment, Energy Security and Net Zero, she went out, I think it was on Times Radio, either this morning or yesterday morning, saying that it was a racist dog whistle. I don't think it was. I think it was a reference to a privately educated Prime Minister who went off to university in America, made all his millions in America, married a multi-billionaire married into a multi-billionaire family, and just doesn't really understand what working class people across the country, what normal people, even middle class people, I would say, are too poor for Rishi Sunak. He just doesn't get Britain. It's not a race thing; it's a socioeconomic thing, if anything.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point, David. We've seen that people like Boris Johnson, who is definitely born into privilege, can still resonate and reach across to working class voters. Who do you think's more out of touch, Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak, David?
I'm not sure either of them are in touch, really. That's part of the problem. And it's, but I mean, just getting back to Andy's point, I don't disagree with him that I suspect Starmer was talking about the kind of the wealth aspect of it and his background and things rather than race issue. But if it had been the other way around, you can bet that the Labour MPs would have been piling in. Calling, if it had been Boris, for example, calling Boris racist for saying exactly the same sort of thing. And, it just goes to prove that you've got to be very careful with your language, especially, if there's a whiff of hypocrisy about the way you conduct yourselves, which I'm afraid there is a bit about Starmer and the Labour Party in that respect. And,
Well, thank you so much. That was David Maddox, political editor of the Express Online, and trade unionist Andy MacDonald. Thank you both very much. Now, a spokesman for Sir Keir Starmer said after the exchange in the Commons on Wednesday, the way in which the Prime Minister speaks makes it clear that he has no appreciation of the reality of life and the struggles that people are facing. The point that he was making when he said about getting Britain is the reality of life facing people. Stand by that.